Welcome back. We are going to talk about the third pillar in Bonai Kiniso, which is the roadmap. You already know that our motivation to create Bonai Kiniso was to help people work together in a better, more efficient, more effective way. And the roadmap is just the next step, the next pillar in Bonai Kiniso that will help us to accomplish that. We already have seen the business domain, where in fact everything which is influencing the way that we work, the product that we are going to build, that's all encapsulated into the business domain. And what we also already have seen is the application board, which is in fact the vision of what our product should become or should be. It's not only a vision of what it should become, it also gives us a sort of glue that will help us to determine all the parts in a very unique way. And then we come to the next part, which is in fact the roadmap, which is in fact the project part. In the project, in a project, we are going to try to build a product, the implementation of the product. And the roadmap is just going to give us, in fact, a pragmatic way to indicate what we will build and in which moment in time. As you know, in Bonai Kiniso, using the motivation model, we always have the process and the product side. For the process side, we have quality assurance, where we have to make sure that we follow certain processes. But in fact, to define our product, we also can use these processes, which are then called the business processes, in fact, to try to create the application board. And so processes are quite important in Bonai Kiniso. To make sure that we are not stagnant, that we are not complacent, we also will encapsulate that into continuous improvement. So everything that we have in Bonai Kiniso will have a sort of growth path, making sure that we have a starting point which can be perhaps a little bit chaotic, but where after time we then can build in more consistency for the future use. For the product, we need to test it. That's our quality control. For that, we have a product breakdown structure, which is in the application board, where we have in fact all the dependencies, where we have all the major functional components. And now we are coming to the point that we have to have also a work breakdown structure. This work breakdown structure is necessary because probably we will not be able to build the product in one go. And saying that means that we have to make sure that every time we put a little piece of our product into a productional environment, that we do that in an organized and structured way. And for that, we use the roadmap. The roadmap, in fact, gives us which parts of the application board are going to be delivered next. And saying that, it doesn't mean that it needs to be delivered in full. It can be a part of a functionality, but at least we need to know what we are going to deliver, so that we can keep an eye on it, so that we also can use it as a sort of basis for our testing that will come in the testing board. So that's why we need that roadmap. Now, a roadmap needs to have clear objectives and goals, meaning it is the end result that we put in there. So it's part of the application board, but we probably will have to mention whether we delivered that functionality in full, or what is in fact to be expected to be delivered for that functionality. And then the roadmap can also be used for delivering, in fact, the key milestones. So we can say that we have 3 big chunks of functionality which will be delivered in consecutive releases. So we then can say release number that one will contain that key milestone, that release will contain another milestone, and so on. So the roadmap is also very suited to in fact give us the opportunity to to have major releases, minor releases, and so on. And it also needs to have manageable tasks, which means that they are time boxed. So we can deliver a part of a functionality, but we cannot say that it will be no matter when. We have to put an end date on it. So the roadmap really is a timeline of fixed things that we are going to deliver. Yeah. And it will also contain a prioritized tasks. So to give it a sense of urgency. So in your application board, your product owner, your business analyst, your client, your user, they all can indicate what for them is more important, part of your business domain. And it's those prioritized tasks that then find a way to the roadmap. Sometimes it's not possible to deliver the most priority based task, but because there is a dependency with something else. But in fact, this gives us a way to handle that. And then it needs to have a certain flexibility, because once we are starting to build, we are also going to give a sort of demo to our users, and they may come up with other priorities, with other ideas, and so we have to make sure that we are able to correspond to that. Our roadmap, therefore, is not etched in stone. It's a living something, and what in fact will happen is that on regular time slots we will have in fact a sort of review of the roadmap. And then the roadmap is also used for communication reasons. It's unambiguous. It has to be complete, correct, accurate, all the things that you know about communication. It is there to say this is what our product will be at that point in time. So it's very, very important that that we have that kind of communication, so that nobody will say, hey, I thought we could already do this or that with the product. No, it was decided in a roadmap that this is the product according to time. And of course it needs to be testable. Why? Because the next step will be that we will have to test this roadmap. And I mean roadmap, I mean the part that is going to be delivered in the roadmap needs to be tested. And that is going to be part of our testing board. As I already mentioned, in fact, this roadmap, it's sort of work breakdown structure. And a work breakdown structure can be seen as a sort of tree, where in fact you have hierarchical decomposition of a project into smaller parts, which are easier to plan, which are easier to fit into the time boxes that you have decided for your roadmap. And in fact, the higher you go in that work breakdown structure, the more you are talking about milestones. The lower that you go, you will have individual tasks. You will have work packages which are organized in that structure, and it is important that these work packages, they are all of the same granularity. We can have multiple tasks rolling up to, for instance, what we could call a story, which is a small piece of functionality, and a bunch of functionality pieces can fit together to a feature, which possibly can be then a functionality. So that's the kind of way that you break down your work structure, and you have to make sure that it is delivery based, meaning you can indicate in your WBS, you can indicate what is going to be delivered at what point in time. Yeah, and in fact you can say also that this work breakdown structure is in fact the scope of your project. So it's your product that is going to be built, but it is deciding what work to be done, and that work to be done is fitted into a project. And again, communication. You have to communicate amongst team members, stakeholders, project managers, so that you have a common understanding of what is expected over time. And that's a very important thing, because we know that we get information out of the business domain, but we probably also will have to communicate progress towards that business domain, so that they also know where in fact we are in time. If you are working agile, some people would say that, oh, this is the product backlog, but it's only partially, because a product backlog, although it is prioritized, although we have that constant grooming factor in there, where we make sure that we can have change, coming from the business domain. It's user focused. That's also very nice, because then we know that it is coming from the business domain. All the effort is estimated. That's the time box effect, so that we know how much work we need to do in a certain amount of time. And then it also gives a sort of refinement. We have those steps, that granularity, going from milestones to single tasks. Yeah, and of course it gives transparency. It helps for communication, and it helps for collaboration. The only thing it doesn't give, and what a roadmap does give, is in fact to say in which moment in time what parts are going to be delivered. The product backlog is nothing more than a huge list with items, and if we do that, or if we complete that complete list, then we know that we also have delivered a full product. But it doesn't say per se which parts needs to be delivered at what moment in time. So next to the product backlog, you will always need something like an iteration plan, an iteration meeting, to make sure that you know what you can build. In SAFe, Scaled Agile, they would call it a release train. So you have a sort of container of product backlog items that then make sure that then will be delivered with a release train at a certain moment in time. The reason why we need this roadmap, I think it is becoming clear. The business domain is giving us all the information that we need to build a product. The application board is telling us this is how the product should look like. But the roadmap in fact is telling us when we can expect which part of that functionality of the product in time. So we need to have that, because we are not working in a big bang scenario where everything is delivered at once. If you have a small project, it may be, and in that case your roadmap is very simple, it's everything. But in reality, most of the projects that we work on, they go over time, and they will grow over time. So that's it. Thank you for listening to this presentation about the roadmap, which is an important pillar in Bonai Kiniso. I hope you join us for the next presentation as well. Thank you.